What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants are in the midst of OTAs. They haven't opened them up to the media just yet, but they've had a couple of private practices with the team, getting back into the groove, getting ready for the upcoming 2024 season. And one thing that's rather surprising and intriguing, Daniel Jones out there competing in 7-on-7 drills. Tore his ACL in November, not a long time ago. It's pretty quick recovery here for Daniel Jones. He's already back on the practice field, throwing passes to Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, getting fully involved in the 7-on-7 drills. Pretty interesting stuff, and we kind of just want to talk about what that means for Jones, what it means for the Giants. Is this something to really have some strong takeaways from and get excited about, or is this more of a mirage, as Alex likes to call it? We'll just go ahead and talk about Daniel Jones returning to practice and what that means for the New York Giants. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to Daniel Jones competing in the 7-on-7 drills at OTAs?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And look, I want to preface this by saying Jones is well ahead of the curve in terms of where I thought he would be at this point in time coming from the rehab. So it seems like he'll be ready for week one. I'm gonna try to beat around the bush in this episode because I'm not trying to dog on Daniel Jones anymore. It's kind of overdone. The horse has been beat. Let's talk about what the upside here could be. Let's talk about where this offense could go and the new pieces that we've added. And Daniel Jones, he's our quarterback. I guess the best thing we can do right now is root for him to be a good quarterback and to win us football games, get to the postseason, because what else do we really have? If he fails, then we end up with another quarterback. We end up resetting the cycle, whatever it might be. I do think the contract there's a lot of complications, and I've gone through this many times, but Daniel Jones has never had a true and tried bona fide star receiver. Now we think Malik Neighbors will be that. He's not even 21 years old yet. Guy can't even drink alcohol legally. So you're kind of looking at a player in Daniel Jones who says to himself, well, our offensive line should be better. I'm not going to say it will be, but it should be. And I now have a top-tier target like Malik Neighbors, not to mention Wan'Dale Robinson coming off the ACL tear. He's now fully healthy. We'll see what happens with Darren Waller. We love Theo Johnson as a prospect with upside at tight end. You still got Isaiah Hodgins. You still got Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt. You kind of go from one of the worst wide receiver cores in football to a pretty decent one overnight. Just getting Malik Neighbors gives you one of the better units in the game because you have such an affordable price tag on Neighbors. And for what it's worth, guys, Neighbors is making an average over 4 years of $7.25 million. If he even sniffs the level of upside that we think he can get to, some of the top receivers in football are making $28 million per season right now. So he's theoretically making $21 million less on average per season. The amount of cap flexibility that presents you is, it's irrespective of Daniel Jones. Forget about Daniel Jones. What if they end up moving on from Daniel Jones? If they end up keeping Daniel Jones, that contract will end up becoming massively important to the Giants' plans. Why? Because now you have $21 million in extra money, and think about what Justin Jefferson's going to do next year. CeeDee Lamb, they're going to reset the wide receiver market. That's what Joe Schoen was thinking. Well, if we can't get our quarterback, let's go get the best receiver available, because at the end of the day, Jefferson's going to get $40+ million per season potentially. Something stupid. It could be 35 plus. I don't know where he's going to land. CeeDee Lamb could be 35+ million too. So you're looking at the receiver market about to take the biggest change that you could find, if Neighbors ends up even close to as good as those guys, you're getting not just a $21 million, talking about a $25 to $28 million price reduction in having a WR1 for the next 4 years, not to mention a 5th-year option, which will be more expensive, but not close to that level. So, thinking about where the Giants are in terms of their salary space, thinking about the long-term, kind of situation. If Daniel Jones has a great year, I'm not talking about a good year, I'm talking about a great year, and the Giants say, well, this is what we thought he'd be the whole time. Let's extend him. We'll reduce the cap hits. Obviously that's not the perfect scenario for many people. It's not my preference, but let's say that did happen. You can rationalize it and justify it because of cheaper contracts across the board at other positions. Notably, Neighbors is giving you a massive pay decrease just because of that, correlation to what other big receivers are making these days. So the importance of Neighbors, irrespective of Jones, is not only great short-term to help boost Daniel Jones, give him a chance at having the WR1 he's never had, but it also is great if they move on from Daniel Jones, because now you have theoretically a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, whether they trade up and get a guy like Carson Beck, who knows, and you have You're WR1 on a rookie contract. What do you think that does for your cap space long term? If you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal and a second-year receiver going into the second year of a deal, and he's already a superstar. You know what I mean? Like that's the hopeful, that's the optimistic approach. So considering the impact that Neighbors has, not just financially, but also the production that he's going to bring to this team, Anthony, how do you feel about this for Daniel Jones from an optimistic standpoint? What do you think he offers him? How do you think he helps him? Do you think this will give Jones enough firepower? Assuming our offensive line is a little bit better, is there a way that he can work his way back into the equation here? What does a great season look like for you? What do you need to see from Jones to say, well, maybe there is hope still left to be had? I know a lot of people are tuned out. You and I have both been on the train of like, we wanted a quarterback, didn't work out. But, what do you have to see from him? Like, what do you think Neighbors, the impact he can make to help Jones maybe at least produce somewhat of a good season?
Yeah, I think that one of the big positives that Malik Neighbors is going to provide to Daniel Jones and this offense at large, quick wins. Getting open early in the route, which creates a throwing window within the first second of the play, rather than forcing Jones to hold on to it. I think that when you're looking at this Giants offense and seeing the struggles that they've had over the past several years with the offensive line, Daniel Jones has had to hold on to the ball because there haven't been a lot of quick throwing opportunities, and the offensive line can't hold up for long enough for Daniel Jones to get the ball out of his hands and into the hands of the right target. So for Jones to have a receiver that's open early in the play, almost immediately after the ball is snapped, means that it's less time that he has to stand in the pocket and less time for the offensive line to screw up. So having a guy like Neighbors helps the offensive line and helps Daniel Jones. And I think that's one of the major impacts that he's going to provide. But also, how about the fact that you're not always going to be able to hit those deep throws, make those tight window throws downfield. Sometimes the ball's going to come out of your hand a little funny, or you're going to get hit as you're thrown. Neighbors can catch the ball underneath and just turn a 2-yard pass into a 50-yard play. That's another big positive that he's going to have for Jones and for the offense in general. I mean, Daniel Jones hasn't had a player like that anytime in his career. He hasn't had a guy who gets open immediately, and he hasn't had a guy who he could throw the ball to and just watch him take off from anywhere and score touchdowns. I guess maybe Kadarius Toney for like 2 plays in an entire season, but that doesn't really count. So Malik Neighbors, being the yards after the catch threat that he is going to be huge for this team. And now Jones is obviously practicing, warming up, getting that chemistry built up with him early, which is important because that is something that we talked about a lot, Alex. We weren't sure if Jones was going to be ready to do any drills at this point in the offseason. We weren't sure if he was going to participate in OTAs, but he is. So he is gaining chemistry and developing that rapport with Neighbors and continuing to build on the chemistry that he has with Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt too, who I feel like a lot of Giants fans have begun to forget about. So this is very important that the Giants starting quarterback is on the field practicing this early in the offseason, because if he was missing out on all of this stuff, like we've talked about before, Alex, new offensive line coach, blocking scheme is going to change a little bit. Daniel Jones needs to be on the field for those drills where they implement the new blocking scheme. Seems like he will be. More so than that, you've also got maybe some nuances with the play calling duties. We still don't know who's calling the plays. Is it Brian Dable? Is it Mike Kafka? I'm sure that throughout the entirety of training camp and OTAs right now, they're testing different things to see how they want to structure this offense. Having Daniel Jones involved and on the field, that is important. So a lot of the rust that he's going to need to knock off when he gets back onto the field, he doesn't have to do all of that right now. Like, he's pretty much getting that rust knocked off now and still learning the offense and gaining the synergy, playing with the new teammates that he's added this offseason. All of that is just super important. So that's the impact of Neighbors. It's the impact of getting Daniel Jones on the football field in the month of May rather than in the month of July. The Giants should be very grateful that he's able to do even the small amount of drills that he's doing. It's going to have a huge impact long term on his ability to run this offense and on the offense's ability to gain chemistry with their quarterback. Very important stuff. And also, it creates less opportunity for Drew Lock to stand out during practice and convince the team that he should be the starting quarterback. So, Alex, I want to ask you about that. I know that you wanted to keep the optimistic viewpoint on Daniel Jones here, and I think that in a way this does that. Drew Lock is also throwing at these 7-on-7 drills, presumably looking pretty decent and playing some good 7-on-7 football. But Daniel Jones being out there kind of gives him the opportunity to fend off Drew Lock early and often, right? Like, already he's able to make it clear I'm the starter and that you're not touching my throne, basically. Do you feel the same way about that? Do you think that that's kind of the mindset for Jones right now, is to get into these OTAs and show how much he can do often and prove to be the best QB? Or do you think that those kind of roster battles don't really even happen until we get to training camp?
I mean, right now, I think Daniel Jones is auditioning for his future every day. And, and I'll give him this. Like, the dude has a great work ethic. He's always been, tier one when it comes to not giving anyone anything to say. He never responds to the criticism. The guy knows everything that's transpired, right? He knows that the Giants just tried to trade up and replace him, right? I mean, that has to be in the back of his mind saying, okay, well, they didn't land the quarterback that they wanted, right? What does that mean to me? It means to me that this is my chance. They tried to replace me. They failed. I have 1 year to get back on the horse and prove to them that I can be the guy. I mean, that's the way I perceive it. I mean, I imagine most other people are saying, if he doesn't have a good year, they're going to move on from him. I think even the Daniel Jones supporters can support that notion. If he doesn't have a good year, it's time to move on. The contract just is awful in terms of what you're hoping from him. $41.6 million cap hit in 2025, $56.5 million cap hit in 2026. So it's unsustainable. You can't pay a quarterback that much if you're not having great seasons. If he doesn't have the potential to be a top 10 quarterback, it is now or never for Daniel Jones. And the Giants said to themselves, well, we couldn't get the quarterback, so let's give him a WR1. Let's give him an offensive line. They invested heavily in both, clearly. Let's see if he can rise to the occasion. And coming off an ACL tear, it's going to be difficult, right? And the reason I think it's going to be difficult is because a lot of his production, people want to look back at 2022. Let's do that. 723 yards, I believe, came on the ground, including multiple touchdowns. Do we think he can run back the same rushing stats he did coming off an ACL tear? I personally don't think so. I think the Giants will try to limit that injury probability. Why? Because the injury clause in his contract. If they lean on him in the ground, the injury probability increases substantially. They want him to be in the pocket. They want him to become a passer from the pocket, throw on the move, focus on throwing, not running. In years past, they would basically opposing defenses figured out, well, if we cover up his first read and we force him to run, we can limit how much damage to do through the air. And yeah, we'll take the rushing yards, like give up the rushing yards to Daniel Jones because he won't throw the football. That was the game plan. Now the game plan is going to be for the Giants, let him stand in the pocket and deliver the ball. Now he has the offensive line, the time to do it. Can he do it? Can he get through his first read? Can he get through his second read? Can he get to his third read? That's going to be the most imperative portion of his development. The Giants managed, by the grace of God, to fix his pocket presence issues. Brian Daboll got rid of a lot of those issues where he was stalling, he was fumbling, he wasn't holding onto the ball correctly. Now can he get him to process the game faster? Can he get him to beat teams in prime time? These are legitimate questions we have to ask ourselves, and the coaching staffs clearly asked themselves when they were thinking about drafting Drake May moving up to the 3rd overall pick. So, Anthony, when it comes to Daniel Jones standing in the pocket, delivering, do you think he can do it? We've seen it happen in small samples, right? The Vikings game, and by the way, historically bad defense. I need to see him do it against the 49ers defense, not the Vikings' historically bad defense. New Orleans Saints, he did it against this average defense, maybe slightly below average defense. We've seen him do it, but 1 or 2 games, 3 or 4 games over the course of 5 years, guys. We've seen it happen like 5 or 6 times maybe. We need to see it happen every week, if not every other week, to be like, okay, like we can now convince ourselves that he has the potential to do it. Doing it a couple of times over the course of 5 seasons does not equate to playoff success. It does not equate to beating good teams when it matters most in prime time. We have 5 primetime games. This is going to be a chance for him to prove he can do it in the pocket, not just using his legs, running the football, which increases the probability of injury tenfold. So how do you think about that? Do you think that he's going to be able to run the same amount? Or do you think he's going to have to be winning from the pocket, winning as a quarterback, getting through his progressions, his reads? Is that something that you're like, all right, like that's where he struggled with the most? Do you think he can improve with a better offensive line and with a better receiving core?
Yeah, I think that he can improve with those things. I mean, I think this New York Giants team is going to go as far as Daniel Jones will take them. But in terms of throwing from a clean pocket and his ability to use his legs, I think Daniel Jones is still going to be mobile. I think he has to be. It's his game. It's how he finds the most of his success. And I don't necessarily think that there is this major concern of re-injury from him running. He didn't get injured running the football. It's not like he ran, made a cut, and tore his ACL, or got hit really hard below the legs, or below the knees and tore his ACL. He was doing a standard drop back, and his knee happened to pop. Like, that's not normal. It's a freak accident. It's not something that was a result of the way that he plays the game. He's never put himself in too tricky of a situation to tear a ligament before running the football. Like, this isn't a result of him being a rushing quarterback that he's injured. He just happened to get injured on a freak incident. So I'm not worried necessarily about him re-injuring. Now, you can make other arguments for him to slow down on the rushing because he had the concussion a couple years ago when he tried to run against Dallas. He had an ankle tweak in his rookie season when he was running. He obviously got hit in the pocket last year that caused a stinger in his neck. So yeah, there is a lot to be said about him protecting his body better, running the football more effectively and not taking hits, getting the ball out of his hands in the pocket so he doesn't take hits. All of those things are true, but in terms of his knee and his rushing ability from the knee, I'm not worried about him re-injuring that knee running the football because we've never seen him hurt himself running the football in a ligament sense. So I think that the main thing, though, is going to be for Jones to just improve his awareness in the pocket and make sure that he keeps his body protected. And that's going to be a tough challenge because this New York Giants offensive line, even though they made these upgrades and we think it's going to be better, we're not expecting it to be a top 5 unit in the NFL. Jones is going to get hit, and he needs to be comfortable getting hit, taking hits while, below the legs and getting hit in the knee and all of that kind of stuff. So it is going to be interesting to see how his playing style might change. Like you said, there probably will be more of an emphasis on throwing from the pocket, but there are also plenty of ways. Brian Daboll is a great offensive mind. There are plenty of ways for him to create open throwing lanes for Jones outside of the pocket. And what I mean by that, you can buy time for a quarterback by sending him on a bootleg or having play action or an RPO. These are different ways where Jones can use his legs without getting hit. He can get into clean pockets without being pressured immediately. So there are things that the Giants can do schematically to help Daniel Jones out, and that's always been a conversation throughout the entirety of Daniel Jones' career. Have they done enough schematically to mask his weaknesses and maximize his strengths? And I would argue that they haven't for the most part, but at the same time, he's needed to play better in many different opportunities as well. So for Jones, staying upright, protecting your body, those are going to be huge points of emphasis. But really, the number one thing, Daniel Jones just needs to score more touchdowns. His 2022 season was great. 15 passing touchdowns is not a great number. Yeah, he added 7 rushing touchdowns as well, but like you said, Alex, that number is probably going to come down this year as the Giants try to protect Jones's body a little bit more. So if he's only adding 2 to 3 rushing touchdowns, man, he can't be throwing 15 passing touchdowns. Daniel Jones needs to put up rookie season touchdown numbers. He had 26 as a rookie. We haven't seen him come close to that number since then. It's really just going to be about putting the ball in the end zone for Daniel Jones. All of the other stuff are going to be ways that they do that. Are they going to run him out of the pocket? Are they going to, utilize a lot of play action, which historically he's been really good on? All of those things will help the New York Giants maximize Daniel Jones, but at the end of the day, the end all be all, Jones has to put up some points on the board, has to score touchdowns. Otherwise, we're unfortunately going to have to watch Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito sling touchdowns down the stretch of the season, which is not necessarily what we want to see. We just want to see the Giants quarterback position succeed. So I think that's kind of the baseline for Jones this year. How many touchdowns are you putting up? How many games are the Giants winning? Can you be the guy that is the catalyst towards those victories? Can you do that? And we've seen him do it before, but like you said, Alex, not enough consistency. He's only done it in spurts, and this is going to be the year where Jones has to prove that he is a consistent, high-level quarterback, and it's going to be really tough for him to do that, though, considering he's coming off of this injury and there is going to be some rust. But again, I think that's why it's really important that he's out there in OTAs now doing these 7-on-7 drills. But Alex, as we continue to progress throughout the OTAs and we get into training camp, what are you looking for from Jones? Like, what is it that's going to stand out to you in the summer once we get to those practices? Like, right now, I think it's great. If you read Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post said that Jones has apparently been throwing with really solid velocity. Maybe he improved his arm strength. He hasn't been able to do a whole lot of work running or, standing much, but he's been throwing from chairs for a long time. Maybe he improved his arm strength and his accuracy. Totally possible that he focused on other aspects of his game while recovering from this injury. But what is it that you're looking for to stand out from Jones that will make you feel a little bit more confident going into the regular season?
This may be crazy, but I'm actually not worried about the arm strength. I'm more worried about the touch sometimes with Daniel Jones. He throws these lasers, and you watch like Malik Neighbors at LSU, and a lot of the passes he caught from Jaden Daniels were just touch passes, just laid up downfield in a breadbasket. You know what I mean? We need more of that from Daniel Jones, not these laser beams that cornerbacks have the ability to undercut. We need these dimes that are dropped in like a pillow, 60 yards downfield with neighbors with a 5-yard cushion, not these underthrown lasers that give a cornerback a chance to break it up. You know what I mean? I need to see more of those type of throws. So like, I'm not really worried about the arm strength, but more about the touch and the precision, like the Tyrod Taylor touch. That's kind of where I would love to see Jones improve his game, especially when throwing the ball downfield. I just think that that's better suited for what the Giants are trying to do. Give your guy time to run underneath of it, not throw these lasers where they have no time, and now the defensive back is right there to make a play because it doesn't have enough height on it. So that's kind of where I'm looking at where Daniel Jones, I think he should improve, more touch on his passes. But I also want to see his mobility. Like, yeah, we've fallen into this trap like a billion times. Daniel Jones looking really good in training camp, looking really good in shorts, looking really good without any contact, looking really good without the offensive line having to do jack crap. So, now is the chance to say, okay, like he looks good physically, but can he do it in a real game? Like that's where the inconsistencies have shown. Not in practice. Daniel Jones has been the best freaking practice player of all time. I need to see him do it in games now. So, that's where I'm like, is it a mirage? I don't give a crap that he connected with Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors in 7v7s where he can't be touched. And he's probably standing there like a statue. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't even been able to say it. The media couldn't even see it. They're just telling us what they saw behind the scenes from the Giants website. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what the Giants website tells me. It's all going to be biased, right? It always has been. So, I want to see it from the media. I want to see it from him in live action, in live games, when he's actually can be hit, when they're trying to tackle him, up against Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. That's where I want to see Daniel Jones make these plays. Not in shorts, not during summer, not in training camp, not in 7v7s, but in live freaking games. So at the very most, from now on to the end of training camp, to the end of this offseason program, to preseason, whatever, I need to see him just staying healthy, right? Just making the throws, getting better with his mobility. Those are the portions of the game where I'm looking for him to continue making progress in, and that way he's ready to go when the actual live action comes around. But I'm not going to be fooled by this, man. I mean, look, we've been pretty good about Daniel Jones in this episode. We've been pretty optimistic, pretty positive, but I'm not going to let this fool me to think that he's going to have a great season based on some training camp freaking narratives, okay? Like, it's not happening, and for what it's worth, it's not happening with any players this offseason. It's Daniel Jones, whether it's, Devin Singletary, whether it's Theo Johnson, or whether it's Wan'Dale, I don't give a crap. I don't care about training camp. All I care about is people staying healthy, getting prepared, doing the hard work, staying disciplined, and being ready for the regular season. That's the most imperative thing. Staying healthy for me is number one priority. I don't give a crap how they perform during training camp.
There you go. Fair enough. I do think training camp is important to watch the performance of certain other players who are competing for roster spots, stuff like that. Obviously, that goes without saying. But you are right. Daniel Jones, what he does in practice, it needs to start translating better to the regular season field. If he's throwing deep balls every other play to Jalen Hyatt and connecting with Malik Neighbors on touchdowns and every single play in training camp, man, start doing it in the regular season and putting some points on the board, like I said. So it is going to be intriguing to see how much work he is able to do throughout the offseason. Does he progress, and is he fully cleared for contact and everything at the start of training camp? That's going to be a big question mark. It's really just like a month and a half to go until then, until he has to get that medical clearance. So we'll see how it goes and how he continues to progress throughout the summer, and if he's ready to rock and roll in preseason. Whether or not the Giants play him in preseason, I think, is going to be a topic of conversation. But it'll be interesting, and of course, we're going to continue to update you on everything about Daniel Jones' injury recovery, about how the Giants are playing at OTAs, training camp, all of that fun stuff right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening out for Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.